everybody, this is Tim, and today I just wanted to do a continuation of our beginner cook series. So, this is intended for people who are really at the very beginning of their, of learning to cook. And so today we're going to start with just something, really simple, making mashed potatoes. Well, most people would say, well, what about the instant kind? And, if anyone's ever eaten instant potatoes, they probably know why. They don't taste the same. They don't taste as good. But, just normal, regular mashed potatoes are really easy to make. So, let me show you how to do that. So the first thing you want to do is get some potatoes. Really doesn't matter that much what kind. I like the bigger ones, the russet potatoes or Idaho potatoes, whatever they're called. But, and wash them. Wash them really, really, scrub on them. Because remember, potatoes come out of the dirt, and unless you want to eat that dirt, you want to scrub it off. So, and then the next thing you want to do, there are a couple different ways of making the mashed potatoes. You can peel them. That's a lot of people do. If you want them really, really smooth, peeling them is the way you want to go. But I'm not going to do that. I only do that on special occasions, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of look over each of these potatoes and cut off anything that doesn't look, quite right, little spuds or, any brown spots or anything like that. Just going to cut it off real quick here. Try not to cut your finger. Uh-oh. These potatoes have been, on the shelf over there for a little while, so that they've, got some. I'm just going to cut the whole edge of that one off because I'm not real comfortable with it. But they've been sitting over there for a little while, and so you want to make sure that if that's been the case, that you do get everything, because they do tend to start rotting. I don't see any areas of actual rot on these, thankfully, because I wouldn't use them if I did. But just be careful. Looks good. That one looks good. And that one looks good. Alright, so one cool thing about when you use a knife. Now if you're going to cook, more than once a year, you want a good quality knife. And it should feel kind of heavy in your hand. You don't want a really, really light knife because you don't have any control over what you're cutting then. They just tend to kind of slice wherever, and sometimes you just slice through your finger. But a good quality knife, and the way you hold a knife, you hold it kind of right here with your thumb and your forefinger, and then you just grab it and grip it. And that gives you a lot more control over what you're cutting. I mean, potatoes aren't that hard to cut, but other things, other vegetables and things, that would be a lot more difficult. So, hold it like this when you're doing things with it. So what I'm going to do is, we just want to dice these potatoes. And so, I'm just going to make a cut through them. And then another cut going the other direction, just kind of like an X type cut. And then, just going to, you want them to be, the diced pieces to be pretty even, because otherwise when you boil them, they start to fall apart while you're waiting on the other larger pieces to cook. So get them pretty even. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit here, and I'm going to use a food processor to cut the rest of these because it'll be way faster. But this is what you're going for if you aren't using a food processor. My food processor has this wonderful little attachment that'll just make large, thick slices, which, they don't necessarily have to be diced. The very thick slices are fine, just as long as the heat from the water can get to them when you're boiling them. So I'm just going to slice these in half, and then put the lid back on the food processor. And then I'm just going to stick them in here and let this thing cut right through them. And it'll make my life easy. Hopefully. not that one. That's about full, so I'm going to have to pull these out real quick. And we're just going to put them into a pot. You want the pot to be fairly large because you're going to put some water in with them. But I mean, that just depends on how many potatoes you're doing. If you're just doing one or two for, just one or two people, then I don't think I'd worry too much about using a giant pot. This one isn't a giant pot by any means. And I'm going to put that back on and finish up the last couple of these potatoes. Throw these in there too, before I forget. Food processor is kind of an interesting tool. It's the one thing, it's really, really useful if you actually use it. But a lot of people just kind of keep this in their house on the counter and it looks pretty, but they don't use it. And I don't understand why, because it's so useful. Yeah, I don't understand. All right, so there's that. Let me dump these in. All right, now we're just gonna fill this pot up with water. You want it to be above the level of the potatoes. All right, and then you just stick this on the stove on medium-high heat. You want it to boil, and you want it to boil until you get to the point where you can stick a fork in it and it just goes through really easily. If you cook it if you boil them for too long, they will fall apart in the water, and they just kind of turn into like a really starchy, mushy water, and you don't want that. So, just until you can get a fork through it easily. And we'll be back after I boil these. All right, everybody, I think our potatoes are ready to go. If you give me just a minute, I'm going to grab them off the stove. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take these potatoes and drain them in a strainer. You don't want all that water left in there. I'm just going to leave that pot in the sink there. And then we're going to put these potatoes into a bowl here, this bowl. Now, it's time to mash them. You could do this a couple different ways. You could use a hand masher. I'm going to use the mixer. It makes my life easier. The hand masher, I don't like the lumps in my potatoes, so the mixer helps to make that a little more smooth and creamy. And so I'm going to put that there. I'm going to throw in a stick of butter. I need to rinse off my hands. I've got something on them from the pot. There we go. So we got our stick of butter in there and we got our potatoes. So I'm going to lower this and turn it on. You want to be careful. This is not the bowl that goes with my mixer. It's dirty right now. I've been making several videos today. So I used it to make lemon cookies, so I have to be a little more careful. Need to get a second bowl. And this will go through and mash the potatoes for us. All right, now we're going to turn that off for just a second, and we're going to pour in some milk. I used, 6 potatoes, so I'd say somewhere between a half a cup and a cup of milk for that. But I mean, really, this is just to your taste. We also do, I forgot to grab it, but we want to include lots of salt. And again, that's just to your taste. If you like your mashed potatoes more creamy, add more milk. If you like my mashed potatoes to be a little more flavorful, salty, whatever you want to call it, add more salt. I've been doing this for years. I just eyeball it. I don't know how to do it any other way. Let me add some salt. I'm adding 2 handfuls if that gives you any idea of the amount of salt you need. And this is gonna mix for a while. I mean, the creamier you want them, the more you want to mix it. Simple as that. You really shouldn't do this kind of thing with a KitchenAid mixer. It's better with a hand mixer. One of the few things that I think that the hand mixers and cheaper mixers are better for. Turn it up just a bit to get a few more of the lumps out, and then these will be ready. All right. All right, so we've got our potatoes here, and they are ready to eat. Just spoon them out into a, let me find something to do that with. There we go. Spoon them out into a bowl and enjoy them. All right, that's that, and I think I'm gonna kind of be bad and lick the bowl. Good mashed potatoes. All right, that's it for today, and hope to see you next time. Goodbye.